The temperature inside the refrigerated trailer was 5 degrees below zero. My breath puffed out in thick, white clouds as I huddled behind a stack of pallets loaded with frozen chicken. My hands were freezing, but my grip on the handle of my old Louisville Slugger baseball bat was iron tight. Outside, I could hear the heavy idling of the semi-truck's diesel engine. I heard the crunch of gravel as a luxury sedan pulled up. Doors slammed. Voices drifted through the insulated steel walls, excited, arrogant voices. "I told you," a younger man's voice boasted, "the old man is clueless. He thinks this is a standard poultry run to Ohio. He doesn't know we're sitting on $500,000 in stolen electronics behind the false wall." That was Darren, my nephew, the boy I had taught to drive a stick shift, the man I trusted with my empire. "Open it up," a rougher voice commanded. "Let's see the merchandise." The latch on the trailer doors clanked. Light flooded into the dark, icy container. Darren stood there, flanked by two men in leather jackets. He was smiling, that slick, used car salesman smile of his. He reached for the release lever of the false partition we were hiding behind. He thought he was about to show off his stolen loot. "Surprise," I whispered. I kicked the pallet stack over. The boxes of frozen chicken crashed down, exposing my hiding spot. I stepped out into the light, raising the bat. The look on Darren's face shifted from arrogance to sheer terror, faster than a blowout at 70 miles an hour. He wasn't looking at a frail old retiree anymore. He was looking at the man who built Mackenzie Logistics from the ground up, and I was about to revoke his license permanently. But before I tell you how Darren ended up pleading for his life in a loading dock at midnight, you need to understand how a kid with so much promise turned my life's work into a rolling crime scene. If you respect the rules of the road and hate liars who cut corners, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let's put this convoy in gear. My name is Frank Mackenzie. My friends call me Mac. For 45 years, I moved America. I started with one beat-up Kenworth and a mortgage I couldn't afford. By the time I turned 68, Mackenzie Logistics had 50 trucks on the road, a depot in 3 states, and a safety rating that was the envy of the East Coast. In this business, your reputation is your currency. If you say a load will be there at 0800, it gets there at 0755. You check your tires, you check your logs, you protect the cargo like it's your own child. That's the code. I loved every mile of it, but time catches up to everyone, even truckers. 2 years ago, my left hip finally gave out. Years of jumping out of cabs onto concrete will do that to a man. The doctor told me my driving days were over. "Total hip replacement," he said. "You need a desk chair, Mac, not an air ride seat." It was a bitter pill to swallow. I lost my wife, Martha, 5 years before that. The trucks were all I had, but I listened to the doctor. I decided it was time to step back, to move into the chairman role and let someone younger handle the day-to-day grind. I chose Darren. He was my late brother's son. He had an MBA, wore nice suits, and talked a big game about modernizing the fleet. "GPS tracking, Uncle Frank," he'd say. "Automated dispatch, fuel optimization algorithms. I can cut our overhead in 20% in the first year." I wanted to believe him. I saw myself in his ambition, so I handed him the keys. I gave him the title of VP of Operations. I moved to my home office, intent on managing the big picture while he ran the floor. For the first 6 months, everything looked good on paper. Revenue was steady, the trucks were moving, Darren was upgrading the software, buying tablets for the drivers, making us look 21st century. "You relax, Uncle Frank," he told me on Sunday dinner, pouring me a glass of wine. "The logistics game is digital now. You don't need to smell the diesel to run a fleet." I should have listened to that little voice in my head right then, the one that told me you always need to smell the diesel. You can't run a trucking company from a spreadsheet. You have to know the drivers. You have to know the routes. About 3 months ago, things started feeling off. It wasn't the revenue. The money was still coming in. It was the costs, specifically the fuel costs. Our diesel bill jumped 15%. Darren explained it away as market volatility and idling due to winter weather.
It's just the cost of doing business, he shrugged. But I know my trucks. I know what a Peterbilt burns idling versus hauling up a grade. And I know my drivers don't idle for fun. It kills their bonus. I sat at home, nursing my hip, staring at the quarterly reports. I felt useless, just an old man signing checks. I started spending my nights on the ham radio in my den, listening to the chatter on the trucking channels. It reminded me of the old days. I reconnected with my old friend Dusty, my former head dispatcher who retired when I did. "Mac," Dusty said to me one night over the radio, "you got Unit 104 running the Cleveland route?" I replied, "Yeah, why?" "Just odd," Dusty cracked back. "I heard a driver on Channel 19 saying he saw a Mackenzie truck parked behind the old textile mill in Gary, Indiana at 3 in the morning. That ain't the Cleveland route, Mac. That's 5 miles off the highway." Unit 104. That was my flagship, a brand new freightliner. "Maybe he got lost," I said, defending my fleet. "Maybe he got lost." "Maybe," Dusty said. "Or maybe he was meeting someone. You might want to check those new GPS trackers your nephew loves so much." That night was the beginning of the end. I didn't sleep. I fired up the admin laptop Darren had set up for me, the one he thought I only used for email, and I logged into the master fleet tracking system. I navigated to Unit 104. I looked at the history for last Tuesday. The map showed a jagged red line, and there it was, a detour, not to a rest stop, not to a way station, but to a desolate industrial park dead in the middle of the night. The log entry read, "Status, stopped, reason, engine overheat." But then I looked at the telematics data stream. It showed the engine temperature was normal. It showed the RPMs holding steady at 900. The truck wasn't broken down. It was idling perfectly. Darren was lying. Someone was cooking the books. And if Unit 104 wasn't broken down, what was it doing parked in the dark for 2 hours with the engine running? I realized then that modernization might just be a fancy word for cover-up.
The sun wasn't even up when I pulled my Buick into the gravel lot of the Mackenzie Logistics main depot. It was 0500 hours. The air smelled of wet asphalt and diesel fumes, a smell that used to mean money to me, but this morning it smelled like trouble. My hip throbbed as I stepped out of the car, reminding me why I wasn't in the driver's seat of a big rig anymore. I leaned heavily on my cane, watching the mist swirl around the rows of parked trailers. I saw a figure sitting on a milk crate near the gatehouse, holding a thermos. It was Dusty. He was wearing his faded Mack Trucks baseball cap and a flannel jacket that had seen better decades. Dusty wasn't technically on payroll anymore, but he couldn't stay away from the yard. He was the only man who knew the heartbeat of this company as well as I did. "Morning, Mac," Dusty said, not looking surprised to see me. He poured steaming coffee into the plastic cup lid and handed it to me. "Unit 104 rolled in about an hour ago. Driver dropped the trailer and took off in a hurry. Said he had a family emergency." "Family emergency," I repeated, blowing on the coffee. "That's convenient. Did he log the mileage?" "Yeah," Dusty nodded slowly. "But the odometer shows about 200 miles more than the manifest called for. Unless they moved Cleveland to Kentucky, someone took the scenic route." "Show me the truck," I said. We walked over to Unit 104. It was a pristine white trailer, 53 feet of refrigerated steel. To the naked eye, it looked like every other box in the fleet. But I wasn't looking with the naked eye. I was looking with 40 years of suspicion. I walked around the exterior. I kicked the tires. I checked the kingpin lock. Everything seemed standard. "Unlock it, Dusty," I ordered. Dusty used his master key to pop the heavy padlock on the rear doors. The hinges groaned as we swung them open. A blast of cold air hit us. The reefer unit was running low idle to keep the temperature down. The trailer appeared to be empty, freshly washed out. The ribbed metal floor was clean. I climbed up, wincing as my bad leg took the weight. I walked all the way to the front of the trailer, tapping the walls with the handle of my cane.
Solid, solid, solid. "It looks empty, Mac," Dusty called from the ground. "Maybe the kid just got lost." "Maybe," I muttered. I stood at the very front of the trailer wall, the nose. I reached out and touched the paneling. It felt freezing cold, just like the rest of the unit. But something felt wrong. In a standard reefer trailer, the cooling unit housing protrudes slightly into the cargo space at the top. Here, the wall was perfectly flat from floor to ceiling. I pulled a tape measure from my pocket. "Dusty, hold the dumb end at the rear threshold." Dusty hooked the tape measure on the edge of the trailer floor. I walked to the nose. 51 feet 6 inches, I read out loud.
I frowned. This was a 53-foot trailer. Even with the cooling unit insulation, I should have had at least 52 feet of usable floor space. 18 inches were missing. 18 inches doesn't sound like a lot in a warehouse, but inside a truck, that's about 100 cubic feet of hidden volume. "It's short," I said, dropping the tape. "There's a false wall." "You sure?" Dusty asked, his voice tightening. "I ordered these trailers custom from Wabash," I said. "I know the specs." I started running my hands along the rivets of the front wall. I wasn't looking for a handle. Handles are obvious. I was looking for a mechanism. In smuggling, you don't use doorknobs. You use hydraulics or magnetic latches triggered by the truck's auxiliary systems. I found a small, peculiar scuff mark near the floor in the corner. It looked like where a forklift fork might have hit, but the metal wasn't dented. It was a pressure plate. I pressed it with the heel of my boot. Nothing happened. "Dusty," I shouted, "go to the cab. Turn on the auxiliary power switch, the one we use for the lift gate." "On it." Dusty jogged to the tractor unit hooked up to the trailer. A moment later, I heard the electrical hum of the aux lines engaging. I stepped on the pressure plate again. Sssss. Pneumatic seals released. The entire front wall of the trailer, what looked like solid steel, popped forward an inch. I hooked my fingers into the gap and slid the panel to decide on hidden tracks. It moved smoothly, heavy and well greased. Behind the false wall was a hidden compartment about 2 feet deep, and it wasn't empty. I stared at the contents. Stacked neatly in the narrow space were boxes, dozens of them. They weren't shipping crates. They were high-end retail packaging. I saw the logos: Apple, Sony, NVIDIA. I pulled one box down, a top-tier graphics card. Retail price maybe $2,000. There were 50 of them in just this one stack. "Mother of pearl," Dusty whispered from behind me. He had climbed up to look. "Mac, that ain't chicken." "No," I said, my voice cold with rage. "It's not." This wasn't just skimming fuel or faking logs. This was a professional smuggling operation. Darren wasn't just modernizing my fleet. He had turned my trucks into mules for a high-end theft ring. He was moving stolen goods across state lines, hidden behind legitimate loads of produce. If the Department of Transportation or the FBI stopped this truck, they wouldn't just arrest the driver. They would seize the entire company. They would seize my assets. My legacy would be legally designated as a criminal enterprise. "We have to call the cops," Dusty said, reaching for his phone. "Stop." I grabbed his wrist. "Mac, this is grand larceny. This is federal." "I know," I snapped, "but who takes the fall? The truck is registered to McKenzie Logistics. The logs are signed by my dispatch team. And Darren? He'll claim he had no idea. He'll blame the rogue drivers. He has layers of plausible deniability. Or worse, he'll blame me. I'm the owner of record. He is just the VP. I looked at the stolen electronics. I need to catch him loading it. I need to catch him holding the smoking gun. "How are you going to do that?" Dusty asked, his voice tightening. "He thinks I'm at home watching Matlock." "He does," I agreed, sliding the false wall back into place until it locked with a satisfying click. I climbed down from the trailer. My mind was racing, plotting routes and logistics like the old days. I knew how to move freight. Now I just needed to figure out how to move a rat into a trap. "Lock it up, Dusty. Put everything back exactly how you found it. We didn't see anything." We walked back to my car. The sun was breaking over the horizon now, painting the sky in colors that usually brought me peace. Today, they looked like warning lights.
"Mac," Dusty said quietly as I opened my car door, "if Darren is moving this kind of weight, he's got partners, dangerous ones. You be careful." "I survived the blizzard of '78 and 3 union strikes, Dusty," I said, starting the engine. "I think I can handle one greedy boy in a suit." But as I drove home, I realized I might have underestimated Darren, because when I pulled into my personal garage, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Sitting there, tucked behind my lawnmower, was a stack of boxes. They were the same boxes I had just seen in the truck. Darren hadn't just used the trucks, he was using my house as overflow storage. Or worse, he was planting evidence. I stood in the dim light of my garage staring at the stack of Sony boxes marked with shipping labels I hadn't authorized. The fear that gripped me wasn't for my safety, it was for my freedom. Darren wasn't just stealing, he was building an insurance policy. If the FBI ever raided the company, Darren would simply point them here. He would claim his senile Uncle Frank was the mastermind, hoarding stolen goods in his own home. At my age, a federal indictment wouldn't be a legal battle. It would be a death sentence. I wanted to burn the boxes. I wanted to drag them to the curb. But 30 years of handling freight manifests taught me one thing. You don't destroy paperwork. You authenticate it. I took out my phone and photographed the serial numbers. I photographed the position of the boxes behind the mower. Then I carefully covered them back up with an old tarp. If Darren wanted to plant a garden of evidence, I was going to let it grow until harvest time. I needed to know who he was talking to. I needed the chain of command. I walked back to the office. It was 8 a.m. now. Darren's flashy BMW M5 was parked in his reserved spot right next to the front door, a spot that used to be mine. He was likely inside, drinking espresso and pretending to work. I parked around the back, near the maintenance bay where Dusty kept his office, a folding chair and a stack of radio equipment. Dusty met me at the door. He held up a finger, pressing his headset to his ear. He was monitoring the company frequency, but he had tweaked the gain to pick up low-band chatter, the kind drivers use when they think dispatch isn't listening. "I got him," Dusty whispered, handing me a spare headset. "Channel 22. It's Darren. He's not using the office line. He's on a handheld." I put on the headphones. The static hissed, then cleared. "The yard is hot right now." Darren's voice cut through the noise. "Unit 104 is docked. We move it tonight. Midnight. Same transfer point." "The old man? Is he secure?" a rough voice asked. "He's handled," Darren scoffed. "He found the gift I left in his garage. He's terrified. He won't say a word. He thinks if he calls the cops, he goes down too." I felt my blood pressure spike. He knew. He probably was watching a hidden camera in my garage when I found the boxes. He wasn't scared of me. He was playing with me. "Good," the voice said. "Bring the full load. We settle the debt tonight. 50 large. Cash." The transmission cut. 50 large. Gambling. I knew it. Darren liked the ponies and he liked high-stakes poker. He had leveraged my company to pay off a bad hand. "Did you record that?" I asked Dusty. "Crystal clear. That's conspiracy to commit wire fraud right there." "It's not enough," I said, taking off the headset. "We know when, tonight at midnight, but we don't know where. If they move the truck off-site to a warehouse I don't own, I lose control. I can't raid a building I don't have keys to." I needed the location. I walked out to the parking lot. Darren was in his office on the second floor. His BMW was unguarded. What Darren forgot, or maybe was too arrogant to remember, is that the company leased his car. My name was on the title, and on the key ring in my pocket, I still had the master fob for every vehicle in the corporate fleet. I walked up to the BMW. I clicked the unlock button. The lights flashed once. I slipped into the driver's seat. It smelled of expensive leather and stale cologne. I searched the console. Nothing. Glove box. Nothing. Then I felt under the seat. It's the oldest trick in the book. My fingers brushed against duct tape. I ripped it loose. A cheap, disposable burner phone fell into my hand. I checked the time. Darren usually came down for a cigarette at 8:30 a.m. I had 3 minutes. I scrolled through the texts. There were no names, just numbers, but the last message sent was coordinates. 41.8781 north,
87.6298 West, Distribution Hub B, 0000 hours. I plugged the coordinates into my phone map. It wasn't a warehouse. It was the old cold storage distribution center on the east side of town, the one that went bankrupt 5 years ago. It was abandoned, private property, isolated, perfect for a handoff. "Hey!" I froze. I looked in the rearview mirror. Darren was walking out the front door of the office building, phone to his ear, lighting a cigarette. He hadn't seen me yet. He was looking at the sky. I needed to get the burner phone back under the seat. If I took it, he'd know the game was up, but I had what I needed. I quickly tapped the phone back into place. I reclined the seat all the way back so my head was below the window line. I held my breath. Darren walked past the car. He paused. He leaned against the hood of the BMW to finish his smoke. I lay there, 6 inches away from him, staring at the stitching on the roof liner. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would shake the car. "Yeah, Mom," Darren said into his cell phone. "Uncle Frank is fine. Just getting old, you know, confused. I'm handling everything." Yeah, the business is booming."
He flicked his cigarette butt onto the pavement, my pavement, and pushed off the car. I waited until I heard the office door chime before I sat up. I slipped out of the car and locked it. I walked back to the maintenance shed, wiping sweat from my forehead. "You look like you saw a ghost, Mac," Dusty observed. "I found the drop zone," I said, catching my breath. "The old cold storage yard. Tonight at midnight. He's moving Unit 104 there to offload to the buyers." "So we call the cops?" Dusty reached for the landline. "Tell him to ambush?" "No," I said, checking my watch. "If we send the cops to an abandoned lot on a tip from a disgruntled ex-owner, Darren will claim he was just parking the truck there, or the buyers will spot the squad cars and scatter. We catch Darren holding the bag, but the big fish get away. I want the buyers. I want the whole ring." "So what's the plan?" Dusty asked. "Darren thinks I'm terrified," I said, a plan forming in my mind. A plan that involved the false wall and the frozen temperature of that trailer. He thinks I'm a confused old man hiding in my house. I'm going to prove him right. I'm going to let him lock me in." "You're gonna what?" Dusty's jaw dropped. "I need to be inside that trailer when the deal goes down, Dusty," I explained. "Unit 104 has a remote interior lock release I installed in '98 for safety. Darren doesn't know about it. I hide in the reefer. When they open the doors to inspect the merchandise, I'm already inside the perimeter." "Mac, that reefer is set to 0 degrees, Dusty warned. "You've got a bad hip. You could freeze to death before they open the door." "Then I better dress warm," I said, "because tonight Mackenzie Logistics makes its final delivery, and the cargo is going to be justice." But what I found when I climbed into the back of Unit 104 an hour later, while the driver was on lunch break, wasn't just the cold. It was something Darren had left in the cargo hold. A loaded pistol sitting on top of a pallet. It wasn't for protection. It was for me. If things went wrong, he planned to use it. And as the heavy doors slammed shut, plunging me into freezing darkness, I realized I might have trapped myself in my own coffin. The darkness inside a 53-foot refrigerated trailer isn't just black. It's a physical weight. As the heavy doors slammed shut and the latch fell into place, the only light came from the faint green glow of the reefer unit's control panel high on the nose wall. The compressor roared to life. It sounded like a jet engine spinning up inside a tin can. The temperature dropped immediately. I could feel the cold seeping through the layers of my thermal underwear and my Carhartt jacket. It settled into my new titanium hip like a dull knife. I huddled behind the stack of pallets I had identified earlier. The driver, one of the new guys Darren had hired without my approval, climbed into the cab. The air brakes hissed. The trailer jerked forward. I braced myself against the freezing steel wall as Unit 104 rolled out of the yard. I closed my eyes. I didn't need to see out the window to know where we were. I've driven these streets for 40 years.
Left turn, hard rumble. That was the potholes on Industrial Parkway. Acceleration, gear shift, hitting the on-ramp for I-90. Consistent vibration, highway speeds. I sat there in the dark, clutching the tire thumper bat I had grabbed from the tool shelf. The irony wasn't lost on me. I built this company to move food to American families. Now, I was hiding like a stowaway in my own equipment to stop my family from selling us out. 30 minutes in, my teeth started to chatter. Hypothermia is a silent killer in this industry. I flexed my fingers inside my gloves. I kept moving my toes. I thought about Martha. I thought about how much she loved Darren. She used to knit him sweaters for Christmas. "He's going to be a leader, Frank," she always said. I'm glad she isn't here to see what kind of leader he became. That thought hurt more than the cold. Suddenly, the trailer lurched. Deceleration, downshifting. We were slowing down sooner than I expected. The old cold storage yard was still 5 miles out. The truck turned sharply to the right. The suspension ground. We weren't on paved roads anymore. Gravel pinged against the undercarriage. We were off route. The truck stopped. The air brakes vented with a loud whoosh. The engine died. The silence that followed was terrifying. I gripped the bat. Why did we stop? Were they checking the load? If they opened the doors now, in the middle of nowhere, and found me, there wouldn't be a conversation. There would just be a shallow grave in the woods. I heard car doors opening outside, footsteps crunching on gravel. Not just the driver, multiple people. "You sure he's not tracking this one?" Marcus Thorne asked, its voice muffled through the insulated walls, but I recognized it. It was Marcus Thorne, the cleaner I saw at the co-working space. "The tracking module is disabled," Darren replied. He sounded confident. "I pulled the fuse myself. To the dispatch board, Unit 104 is sitting in the depot getting an oil change." "And the old man?" Thorne asked. I held my breath. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "Frank?" Darren laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. "He's home right now, probably staring at the pile of stolen TVs I planted in his garage. He's paralyzed with fear. He thinks if he makes a move, I'll pin the whole operation on him. I own him." I clenched my jaw so hard I felt a molar crack. He didn't just want my money. He wanted my dignity. He wanted me to die thinking I was a criminal. "Open it," Thorne ordered. I tensed. I shifted my weight, ignoring the scream of pain from my hip. I positioned the bat. I was ready to spring. The latch clanked, but the door didn't open. Instead, I heard the sound of heavy metal grinding against metal, a ratchet sound. Click, click, click. "What are you doing?" the driver asked outside. "Cargo lock," Darren said. "This shipment is high value. I want a secondary seal on the exterior hasp until we get to the warehouse. Nobody touches this freight until I see the cash." He wasn't opening the door. He was putting a high-security bolt seal on the outside camlock bars. My blood ran cold. The interior release handle I had been counting on, the safety mechanism I installed in '98, only worked on the latch. It couldn't bypass an exterior bolt seal or a heavy-duty padlock applied to the camlock bars. I was trapped, truly trapped. The footsteps walked away. The truck doors slammed. The engine fired up again. Panic flared in my chest. I scrambled over the frozen boxes to the rear doors. I grabbed the safety release handle. A glow-in-the-dark lever marked push to open. I shoved it. The latch clicked. I felt the mechanism disengaged. I pushed against the door. It moved half an inch, then stopped dead with a metallic thud. The exterior seal was holding it fast. I banged on the door. "Darren! Darren! Open this door!" But the reefer unit roared back to life, drowning out my voice. The truck lurched forward, throwing me back onto the frozen pallets. We were moving again. I slumped against the wall. The cold was biting deeper now. My hands were numb. I checked my phone. No signal inside the steel box. I had overestimated myself. I thought I was the hunter, but a hunter who steps into a cage isn't a hunter anymore. He's bait. We drove for another 20 minutes. Every minute felt like an hour. My extremities were tingling, the bad kind, the kind that comes before you stop feeling anything at all. Then we stopped again. This time, the surroundings felt different. The air brakes hissed. The truck reversed, beeping loudly, probably backing into a dock or a bay. I crawled back to my hiding spot behind the pallets. I didn't have a choice anymore. I couldn't escape. My only play was to wait for them to open the door and hope I still had enough strength to swing the bat. The engine shut off. Voices again, echoing this time, like we were inside a large structure. The distribution hub. "All right," Darren boomed. "This is it. 50,000 in graphics cards and tablets. Unload it fast." "Money first," Thorne said. "Fine," Darren snapped. "Count it." I heard the zip of a duffel bag, the slap of cash bundles. "It's all here," Thorne said. "Open it." The moment had arrived. I stood up, leaning against the false wall for support. My legs felt like blocks of wood. I gripped the bat. I needed to time this perfectly. If I swung too early, they'd shoot me. If I swung too late, they'd overwhelm me. Click, click. The exterior lock was being cut with bolt cutters. Clank. The bars rotated. "Here comes the jackpot," Darren said. The doors swung open. The light that flooded in was blindingly bright. Industrial floodlights. I squinted against the glare. "Hey, Darren," I rasped, stepping out from behind the pallet stack.
"I'm supposed to be scared," I interrupted, stepping down from the loading dock ramp. My hip screamed in protest, but I didn't limp. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. "I'm supposed to be trembling in my garage, staring at the stolen TVs you planted there. Isn't that right, Darren?" I walked toward him. He flinched. "I found the tracking bug you put on my car." I lied. It was a gamble, but a safe one. "And I found the burner phone under your seat. I know about the gambling debt. I know about the ghost loads. And I know about Marcus Thorne." I pointed the bat at the man in the leather jacket standing next to the money. Thorne didn't flinch. He didn't look scared like Darren. He looked annoyed. He zipped up the duffel bag of cash. "This the uncle?" Thorne asked Darren, his voice devoid of emotion. "The one you said was senile? Because he sounds pretty lucid to me." He is," Darren stepped back, bumping into the forklift. "He's crazy, Marcus. He's just talking. Nobody listens to him." "They listen when I show them the photos," I said, locking eyes with Thorne. "I have pictures of you accepting the cash at the hive. I have the audio of your radio transmission ordering this shipment. And right now, my attorney has instructions to email the entire packet to the FBI field office if I don't check in by 0100 hours. I checked my watch. It was 0045. "You have 15 minutes to decide if you want to be a fugitive or a prisoner." Darren looked terrified. The insurance policy I bluffed about hit him hard. He wasn't built for prison. But Thorne wasn't built for bluffing. He chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. He reached into his jacket. "You're a smart guy, Frank. I respect that. You built a good company. But you made one mistake." He pulled out a pistol. It was a compact 9mm. He leveled it at my chest. "You came alone, Frank, and dead men don't make phone calls to lawyers." Darren shrieked. "No! Marcus! Put it away! We can't kill him! He's high profile! People will look for him!" "People look for missing persons, Darren," Thorne said calmly, not taking his eyes off me. "They don't look for bodies dissolved in acid. We have the cleaning chemicals right here in the dock." Thorne cocked the hammer. "Drop the bat, old man." I dropped the bat. It clattered loudly on the concrete floor. My hands were empty. I was defenseless, an old trucker facing down an executioner.
"Darren," I said softly, ignoring the gun. "Look at me." Darren looked. He was shaking violently. "Is this what you wanted? Did you want to modernize the company into a slaughterhouse? Your father built this fleet with me. We hauled steel. We hauled food. We never hauled bodies. Is $50,000 worth my life?" I... Darren couldn't speak. He was hyperventilating. "Shut him up," Thorne ordered Darren. "Get the zip ties. We finish this now." Darren moved toward me, holding plastic restraints. He was crying. "I'm sorry, Uncle Frank. I'm sorry. I have no choice. He'll kill me too." "You always have a choice, son, and you just made the wrong one." Thorne raised the gun. "Say goodnight, Mac." I closed my eyes, but I didn't pray. I counted. 3, 2, 1. Crash! The skylights of the warehouse shattered. 3 loud canisters dropped from the darkness above, trailing smoke. They hit the floor with a metallic clang. Boom! Flashbangs. The world turned white. A deafening ringing filled the air. I had closed my eyes just in time, but Thorne hadn't. He screamed, clutching his face, blindly firing a shot into the ceiling. "Federal agents! Drop the weapon! You are surrounded!" A voice boomed over a megaphone from the roof fence. The bay doors at the far end of the warehouse burst open. Armored tactical vehicles roared in, sirens blaring, tires screeching on the polished concrete. A swarm of men in body armor poured out, rifles raised. "Get on the ground! Now, now, now!" Thorne tried to run toward the back exit. He made 3 steps before a taser poe hit him in the back. He went down hard, convulsing. Darren dropped to his knees, putting his hands on his head, sobbing loudly. "Don't shoot! I'm unarmed! I'm the VP! I'm a hostage!" I stood still amidst the chaos, the smoke swirling around my legs. A man in a windbreaker with FBI printed in yellow on the back walked up to me. He lowered his weapon. "Mr. Mackenzie?" the agent asked. "That's me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Behind the agent, walking through the smoke like a cowboy emerging from the mist, was Dusty. He was holding a handheld radio in one hand and my phone in the other. "Did I cut it too close, Mac?" Dusty grinned. 15 minutes, I grunted, wiping the cold sweat from my forehead. "Traffic was hell," Dusty laughed. "But hey, the cavalry arrived." I looked at Darren. Agents were zip-tying his hands behind his back. He looked up at me, his face streaked with tears and snot. "Uncle Frank," he wailed, tell them I was undercover. Tell them I was trying to stop him." I walked over to him. I looked down at the boy I had raised, the boy who locked me in a freezer. "Undercover?" I shook my head. "No, Darren, you were overhead, and I just cut the budget." They hauled him away. I turned to the FBI agent. "The in-flight is behind the false wall in the trailer. My personal garage also contains evidence he planted. I give full consent for a search." "We'll need your statement, sir. But first, are you okay? You look frozen." I looked at the open trailer doors. I shuddered, finally feeling the cold leaving my bones. "I'll thaw," I said. "Just get me a hot coffee and a new padlock." The legal process moved faster than a heavy load on a downhill grade. With my testimony, the physical evidence in the trailer, and Dusty's radio intercepts, the defense didn't have a leg to stand on. It turns out that Marcus Thorne was wanted in 3 states for racketeering. The FBI was thrilled to finally catch him. They offered Darren a deal: 10 years in federal prison in exchange for flipping on the rest of Thorne's distribution network. Darren took the deal. I saw him at the sentencing hearing. He wasn't wearing his tailored Italian suit. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. He looked at me from across the courtroom. He didn't look angry anymore. He just looked lost. He mouthed the words, "sorry." I didn't mouth it back. I just nodded once. Forgiveness is a personal journey, but business is business, and he had bankrupted his moral credit score. Mackenzie Logistics took a hit. The fines for facilitating interstate theft, even though I reported it, were steep. I had to sell 5 trucks to pay the legal bills and the penalties, but we survived. The drivers knew I had cleaned house. The clients respected that I didn't try to sweep it under the rug.
I held a town hall meeting in the garage the day after the arrest. I told every mechanic, dispatcher, and driver exactly what happened. We run clean, or we don't run at all. They applauded. I didn't keep the vice president office empty, but I didn't hire another kid with an MBA. I promoted Ben Miller. Ben has driven for me for 30 years. He has 2 million safe miles under his belt. He knows the difference between a fuel surcharge and a profit margin. He manages the fleet from a desk now, but he keeps his steel-toed boots on. As for Dusty, he's back in the dispatch chair part-time. He says retirement was boring anyway. He likes yelling at drivers too much to stay home. I'm 71 now. My hip is fully healed. I don't drive the rigs anymore, but every Sunday morning I go down to the yard. I walk the line. I check the tires. I make sure the chrome is polished. Yesterday, I opened the rear doors of Unit 104, the trailer that almost became my coffin. It was empty, clean, and cold. The false wall was gone, ripped out by the FBI for evidence. I stood there for a long time, looking at the empty space. People tell me I should be sad about Darren. They say he's blood, but in trucking, blood isn't what binds you. The chain of custody binds you. When you sign for a load, you are responsible for it until you deliver it safely. Darren broke the chain. He abandoned his responsibility. I thought I was building a legacy for my family. I realized that my legacy isn't the name on the door or the money in the bank. My legacy is the fact that when a Mackenzie truck rolls down the highway at night, the driver is safe, the cargo is legal, and the destination is certain. Greed is the heaviest load you can carry. It drags on your engine, it burns your brakes, and eventually it runs you off the road. I prefer to travel light. I walked back to my car, leaving the yard in good hands. The sun was setting, painting the sky in purples and reds. I thought about Martha. She would have been heartbroken about Darren, yes, but she would have been proud that I protected the house we built. To all of you watching, check your logs, watch your GPS, and if someone offers you a shortcut that looks too good to be true, check the brakes. You might just be heading for a cliff. This is John Vengeance. Thanks for riding shotgun with me on this one. If you believe that justice is the only load worth hauling, hammer that like button and subscribe. Keep the shiny side up and the rubber side down. Over and out.